consueto, questa biblioteca, avendo un attivissimo canale YouTube, cerca di trasmettere in streaming e in diretta le diverse iniziative, come appunto quella per cui siamo convenuti qui oggi nella splendida cornice del Salone San Sovignano, la libreria vecchia della Biblioteca Nazionale Marciana, che ha il piacere di ospitare la conferenza del professor Hall Bowman, intitolata Viaggio Another Journey to the East, Viaggio verso l'Est, una conferenza per la quale ringraziamo la professoressa Esperia Eliado perché ci ha messo appunto sulla via, sulle tracce del professor Bowman, che a breve presenterò. E naturalmente abbiamo presente anche il direttore della Biblioteca Nazionale Marciana, il dottor Stefano Trovato, che per l'occasione, visto che questa conferenza sarà incentrata sul tema importantissimo per Venezia dei viaggi e dell'esplorazione, coglierà l'occasione, d'accordo con l'illustre relatore, di illustrare l'incunabolo di Cristoforo Colombo, il 1493, quando appunto Cristoforo Colombo con un'agile relazione riferì della scoperta, del viaggio e della scoperta delle Americhe ai suoi committenti e sostenitori. Voi vedete appunto al tavolo dei relatori questo illustre ospite, che ci fa molto piacere per la prima volta, dopo la cerimonia naturalmente di restituzione alla Biblioteca Nazionale Marciana, esporre in piena luce e a diretto contatto con il pubblico, e quindi insomma questo è l'ospite d'onore. Io vorrei in breve presentarvi il professor Bowman, storico, scrittore, curatore olandese tedesco, docente di urbanistica, design e architettura e direttore fondatore di Design Society, un'iniziativa della China Merchants Group e della Victoria and Albert Museum di Shenzhen, inaugurata nel dicembre del 2017, e dal 2022 è professore ordinario presso l'Università di Shanghai, ed è qui ospite, relatore, per raccontarci di una particolare spedizione ciclistica di oltre 10.000 chilometri, appunto viaggio verso l'est. Ma lascio adesso la parola ai relatori. Innanzitutto passo la parola al dottor Stefano Trovato, il nostro direttore della biblioteca.
Grazie. Saluto anch'io la professoressa Eliado, il professor Bowman, i nostri ospiti che ci seguono anche non solo qui ma grazie al canale YouTube. E è sempre molto bello partecipare a momenti come questi, e soprattutto in questo splendido ambiente, questo capolavoro del Rinascimento che, per parafrasare la Biennale Architettura di quest'anno, è una delle più alte testimonianze dell'intelligenza collettiva dei veneziani, e anche per la capacità di concentrare una vertiginosa serie di significati universali in questo splendido soffitto decorato da quelli che erano i più importanti artisti attivi a Venezia in quegli anni, cioè negli anni della metà del Cinquecento. Oggi abbiamo appunto l'occasione e la gioia di collaborare con la professoressa Eliado e il professor Bowman con questo importante evento Viaggio verso Est, e appunto, come si diceva prima, è l'occasione di ricordare che quest'anno la Biblioteca Marciana ha festeggiato il ritorno di questo preziosissimo stampato. Si tratta di un piccolo stampato, è un incunabolo, cioè un libro stampato nel XV secolo, di sole 4 carte, cioè 8 pagine, ma è una grande testimonianza di uno dei momenti più decisivi della storia, dopo il quale nulla sarebbe più rimasto uguale. Questo stampato contiene infatti la prima traduzione latina di una lettera che Cristoforo Colombo scrisse appena ritornato nel 1493 dal suo primo viaggio in America. Fu tradotta dallo spagnolo al latino e stampata con data al 29 aprile 1493, quindi proprio pochi poche settimane, pochi mesi dopo il ritorno di Colombo dal suo primo viaggio. Colombo infatti appena rientrato in Europa dal suo primo viaggio oltreoceano, come diceva lui stesso, viaggiò a ovest per arrivare a est e diffuse con lettere la notizia del suo ritorno. E dopo la stampa di una lettera in castigliano fu il turno appunto di una versione in latino, questa qua, quindi la lingua nota alle persone di cultura in tutta Europa, destinata a dare maggiore e più ampia diffusione, tanto che questa versione latina fu poi tradotta in varie lingue nazionali, quindi lingua latina, perché è nota in tutta Europa, e il nuovo medium della stampa, per dare appunto l'idea della capacità di raggiungere più pubblico possibile in tutta Europa. L'incunabolo che torna alla Marciana fu pubblicato a Roma dallo stampatore Stefan Planck in 2 stati di stampa leggermente diversi. Il primo di questi 2 stati di stampa riporta come destinatario Raffaele Sanchez, ed è un errore perché in realtà il destinatario si chiamava Gabriele Sanchez, come poi appunto fu corretto nel secondo stato di stampa. Ed è un divertente lapsus freudiano perché è uno scambio in realtà tra 2 arcangeli, Raffaele e Gabriele. Sanchez era il tesoriere dei re di Castiglia e Aragona e quindi ciò spiega la destinazione del testo, perché Colombo appunto fa come una specie di relazione ai suoi finanziatori. Così si può leggere quello che scrive Colombo, l'arrivo dell'esploratore genovese nelle isole appena scoperte, lui stesso dice nuper inventis, cioè appena scoperte, dopo 30 giorni di navigazione da Cadice, in quello che Colombo definisce in latino mare indicum, cioè mare delle Indie. Ora, ci saranno sicuramente, anzi speriamo anche a breve, nuove scoperte in biblioteche e archivi su quella che era la conoscenza in Europa delle terre oltre l'Oceano Atlantico. Per esempio, solo qualche anno fa è stata scoperta in una biblioteca privata una inedita cronaca di un monaco milanese, Galvano Fiamma, in cui questo Galvano Fiamma, grazie ai contatti con i marinai del nord Europa, dava notizia dell'esistenza di terre oltre l'Oceano Atlantico. Poi ci sono le teorie di Giorgio Padoan, secondo cui i famigerati e famosi fratelli Zeno di Venezia navigarono davvero nei mari del nord Europa e poi anche nei mari del nord dell'Oceano Atlantico, arrivando quasi in America, secondo una teoria veneziana del Cinquecento che forse voleva togliere a un genovese, cioè Colombo, il primato dell'arrivo in America. Però in ogni caso il momento decisivo della storia fu segnato da Cristoforo Colombo. L'impatto della sua scoperta, come è noto, fu immenso e quindi anche nella cultura veneziana. Per quanto però nell'editoria veneziana, che pure nel Cinquecento è una tra le più fiorenti, se non la più fiorente dell'epoca, non vi sono pubblicazioni immediate su Colombo, mentre, come abbiamo visto, appunto questo incunabolo è stampato a Roma subito nell'aprile 1493. E a Venezia c'era, forse appunto perché Colombo era genovese, c'era un po' di scetticismo all'inizio. Per esempio nel 1499 il diarista Girolamo Priuli scriveva: questa nuova mi pare grandissima se è vera, però dice io non li presto autentica fede. Lui scrive proprio così. E quindi in alcuni settori della cultura veneziana c'è quindi la tendenza a sminuire l'importanza di Colombo. E appunto, secondo l'ipotesi prevalente, i viaggi dei fratelli Zeno, quelli che ho citato poco fa, in realtà sono frutto di pura fantasia di un loro discendente del Cinquecento, fantasia però finalizzata a togliere a un genovese il primato dell'arrivo in America. Tanto che ancora nel 1782 Alberto Fortis scriveva, e qui cito: le scoperte geografiche dei veneziani stanno esposte come eterno monumento di gloria nazionale nelle insigni tavole del Palazzo Ducale, cioè proprio qua vicino, nella grande sala dove ci sono raffigurate delle carte geografiche come dipinte, no? E poi continua Fortis: Niccolò e Antonio Zeni, i famosi fratelli Zeno di cui prima, nel 1390 avevano scoperto l'America settentrionale un secolo innanzi Colombo. Quindi ancora nel 1782 c'è chi dice davvero i fratelli Zeno sono arrivati in America e hanno scoperto quindi l'America prima di Colombo. Però c'è anche l'altra tendenza, cioè riconoscere l'importanza di Colombo, tanto che il cancelliere della Repubblica Veneziana Ramusio nel Cinquecento, un collaboratore di Pietro Bembo, grande letterato e anche direttore della Marciana, Ramusio appunto nel Cinquecento non sminuisce Colombo, tanto che lo definisce, cito, «Homo veramente che se fosse stato appresso gli antichi gli averian dedicato qualche stella nei segni celesti. come a Ercole e a Bacco, e la nostra età si può tenere gloriosa di aver avuto un uomo italiano così grande e così famoso. Così scrive Ramusio, quindi addirittura lui dice nell'antichità gli avrebbero dedicato una costellazione. E poi Ramusio prosegue: avendo il nostro Signore Dio eletto Colombo e datogli valore e grandezza d'animo per far così grande impresa, la più meravigliosa e la più grande che già in finiti secoli sia stata fatta. Così scrive Ramusio. Quindi nella cultura veneziana c'è un po' di ambivalenza. Alcuni tendono a sminuire l'impresa di Colombo, altri invece proprio a riconoscere la grandezza, l'importanza del suo viaggio. E anche nella presenza di questo stampato di Colombo alla Marciana si può vedere il risultato, secondo le ricerche della collega bibliotecaria Orsola Braides, dell'importanza immediatamente data da un veneziano all'impresa di Colombo. Infatti questo esemplare marciano era a quanto pare conservato in una miscellanea proveniente dalle raccolte librarie della famiglia Zane, famiglia veneziana. Questa raccolta era stata iniziata da Bernardo Zane, protonotario apostolico a Roma negli anni proprio di Cristoforo Colombo. E forse quindi, siccome questo è un incunabolo del primo stato, quindi di quelli proprio stampati per primi, forse la presenza di questo incunabolo nel suo primo stato attesta l'immediato interesse del protonotario veneziano Bernardo Zane per le nuove notizie arrivate dall'oltreoceano, come quasi si fosse precipitato a raccogliere l'incunabolo appena stampato. E quindi appunto, questa presenza dell'incunabolo a Venezia, prima in una biblioteca familiare e poi in una biblioteca pubblica, cioè questa biblioteca marciana, è la conferma perché di questa ambivalenza del rapporto della cultura veneziana con Colombo. E quindi è importantissima non solo la presenza di questo incunabolo, ma anche la sua restituzione avvenuta quest'anno grazie, e qui ci tengo di nuovo a ringraziare il Comando per la tutela del patrimonio culturale dell'Arma dei Carabinieri, perché questo incunabolo ci permette, la presenza proprio fisica qua a Venezia, di ricordare sia in generale la sua importanza grandissima, sia anche un importante aspetto della cultura veneziana, che ha spesso oscillato tra il dare e il negare importanza al viaggio di Colombo. E quindi sono molto grato, ripeto, ringrazio di nuovo la professoressa Eliadu e il professor Buman per questa occasione che ci permette ancora una volta di sottolineare l'importanza di questo incunabolo in occasione appunto di un evento su un viaggio a est, quello che sperava di fare Colombo, perché lui appunto, e qui chiudo, lui diceva, mi sembra buscare il Levante per il ponente, cioè lui sperava di, andando a ovest, di raggiungere l'est, perché la terra è rotonda, però c'era l'America di mezzo. Grazie. Adesso passo la parola alla professoressa Eliadu.
Grazie, Direttore. I will say some words only for our English speakers at this moment, bridging one talk in Italian and one talk in English, that what our director of the library here has presented is the first print in Latin of the letter of Cristoforo Colombo announcing his discovery, the new land to the kings. So this wonderful document that was stolen was brought back to the library, and with this presentation, this occasion, hosting Professor Baumann here talking on his journey to the East, we would like to celebrate the power of human conviction on going beyond borders. What a travel, a journey can be a conquest of our fears, can be a conquest of lands as well, with what good and bad that may bring. But let us celebrate the power of words, the power of journey, and most of all, for me, the power of human passion and courage. Thank you, and I'll pass the word to Professor Baumann for his side of the journey.
Yes, good afternoon, Dr. Trovato. Thank you so much for your introduction and your generosity to allow this event to happen, to make me speak about something that I believe has some strong relations with the source that you were describing, the letter by Christopher Columbus. So thank you for giving the opportunity, but also thank you for giving the reference to intensify, I hope, the discourse I have to share with this wonderful audience, that I also would like to thank for coming and for their willingness to let me speak in English, the language that is the easiest for me to convey my message. But if there's anything you think this is really important, I want to really understand what he is saying, just raise your hands during my talk. I'm happy to explain a little bit more. And I would also like to thank Professor Iliadou for mediate between my journey and this wonderful venue, and Professor Trovato and his staff, and to make this event possible. So thank you very much, everybody. I have to share something with you about a project. I would call it maybe more than a passion. It's more like an aspiration to understand better the East. That's why I made a journey to the East last year, to slowly but surely find the different shades of the East, starting in Amsterdam and arriving 6 months later in Shanghai on a bicycle. So kilometer by kilometer and country by country, altogether 18 countries, I experienced how the East is actually not just one thing, it's many different things. But it's not just different things, it's also difference itself, with the Western mind slowly penetrating the East, going to the East. That's an experience that absolutely need to be shared. And I'm so happy that now I'm in Venice, where one of your most famous sons of this city, Marco Polo, tried and actually achieved a similar kind of journey many centuries ago. So I always felt I need to report my journey to the people of Venice, and what is a better place to do this here in the Biblioteca Marciana, where they hold some of the most important sources of European history that I will discuss more in detail later on. So my journey to the East was called, in Chinese, Dongyouji. Dongyouji means journey to the East, and it's a reference to maybe the most famous travelogue in Chinese language, which is called Xiyouji, Journey to the West. I tried to make a response to this very famous source of Chinese culture and history about a monk, a 7th century monk, who traveled to India to find the Buddhist sutras and bring it back to China for translation. This is a wonderful story, an almost mythical story, and I try to find a direct response to this beautiful source by calling my journey to the East. So it was a lonely endeavor. I was almost 6 months on the road, just with my best friend, my bicycle. And this photo is taken in the Tantianxin mountain ridge in Kyrgyzstan, close to China, where at another very steep climb, I decided to look back for a moment and see how steep actually the slope was. How can I? Click, okay. And I took this picture also in Kyrgyzstan, in mid-Asia, because I came across a statue of a Marco Polo sheep. In Marco Polo's Milione, his his travelogue about his long multi-year journey. He also described his encounter with this particular kind of sheep, very strong species. I always had this book and this adventure on my mind while going. So I thought this is the moment to make my tribute to Marco Polo, which his name is in Chinese Marco Polo. Okay. I had the opportunity to visit this wonderful museum yesterday. It was my first time here, and I came across this unbelievable beautiful map, the Fra Mauro map from the 1450 or something, which actually covers basically the territory that I crossed on my bicycle. And it struck me. This was the world in 1450. There was a world without America. So it's very interesting that you introduce, just a few decades later, there was the report from Columbus returning from the Americas, which he thought was actually East Asia, adding a vast territory to the map of the of Fra Mauro. And to start sharing with you some of my motivations to go on a bicycle and go slowly to the east, to do it in a kind of direct experiential way, was to unpack, to dissect almost, many layers of our East-West relationship in culture and in society. There are many dimensions of the East-West relationship. And at the present day, this relationship doesn't look as good as at some times before. On the contrary, there is a growing divergence with the East. And I believe that it is very important to not only keep understanding and keep exploring the East, but also make a genuine, explicit effort to shape the dialogue. So I'm trying to figure out different dimensions of the East-West relationship. And one of the well-known Western tropes in this relationship has been to go to the East for punishment. There must be a certain assumption that what happens in the East is not good. And there is a certain entitlement to go to the East to punish. But that's certainly not the only thing. There are many more dimensions to share. There's also this element that the West has a assumed or maybe subconscious awareness of its own guilt, going to the East as an act of redemption, maybe even going back to paradise. Again, in this beautiful museum, there are some depictions of this paradise, the Garden of Eden, and I will come back to that as well. So that's also a interesting axis between guilt and redemption. For my own home city, Amsterdam, I brought this painting of Rembrandt to go into this value of redemption. And then there is another one that is actually very basic, because the sun rises in the east every day, and that's the gift to humanity to do something with its life. So the cycle from darkness to enlightenment and the move towards the east to find enlightenment, to find the light, is also, coming back. And if you go in any church, any Catholic church here in the city, you will find this direction, this orientation to the east as going to the enlightenment, going to the light. And I share with you a picture that I took 1 year ago at the far eastern tip of the island of Crete, Kreta, where I found a village called Katosakros. And that's the place where, according to Greek mythology, the supreme god Zeus landed with Europa the princess from Lebanon, from the Phoenician princess Europa, who he kidnapped from the beaches of Tyrus in the present-day Lebanon, and took to Crete, where her violation happened, but also where the beginning of European culture was situated ever since. So this is the place where you see the sun rising, that even at this crime scene, so to speak, where the supreme god Zeus did his thing with his prey, you could say, there's the sun coming up again. The generosity of the light giving back life every day. And then there is another axis, an interesting cultural axis, from power to wisdom. The power of the West, the worldly, you almost could say, the Roman ambition to conquer the world, to the aspiration to understand the world and to meditate life, so to speak, as something that comes closer to Eastern wisdom. And there is also a strong tradition across the arts to capture this element of wisdom being endowed to the people. And here it's God giving wisdom to the King Solomon, who later on took such a pivotal role in the Old Testament. So you could say that my journey to the East was not just any journey into any direction, but actually a journey along the most powerful cultural axis of exchange in history. It's very hard to find any other cultural axis with as much harvest, as much fruit of cultural endeavors and aspirations and ambitions as along what came to be known as the Silk Road. So the Silk Road is one way to capture, to describe this cultural axis. It's a very powerful one because it has so much history. I followed the Silk Road for the largest part of my journey, and I was very happy somewhere in China to find a mulberry tree where the silkworms are eating the fabric of the future silk production that became so important in the East-West relationship, and also the mutual interdependence, and also the curiosity maybe, and the longing of the West to know more and to enjoy more of the East. So I called my journey to the East in a kind of subtitle, A Quest for New Silk on That Old Road. I didn't want just to describe what I saw. I tried to interpret, I tried to create a story out of it. But let me first share with you some of the actual experiences on the road. Here you see this road in a Persian image from, I think, the 15th century, and now I can share with you that almost that same road as in this picture is still existing. It's an army road that was designed by the Persians in many hundreds of years before Christ. It's like a victory road across the present-day Turkey. It was not easy to cycle there, but the experience made up with that very much. Oh. Can I go back?
Oops, we lost it. Scusate.
Yeah. Anyway, this picture. I have another picture of the itinerary that I will share later. It will come back later in the presentation. But here are some details. Let's say, sharing with you the most basic level of navigation and physical effort to make it to Shanghai. So I was working with an app called Komoot, helping me to measure and to count and to make this effort at least a quantitatively controlled thing. Daily, I was very occupied with managing my distance, which means also managing the physical effort that you need to do to make it to the next stop. But that's not culture. I would like to say much more about one of the key historical experiences that I went through, which was about crossing many borders. I already said I was crossing 18 countries, but I was crossing much more than just countries. Countries are a kind of artificial thing. I crossed borders in a variety of ways. For instance, by pure coincidence, I passed this artwork, which doesn't look like an artwork, does it? But because I needed to sneeze my nose right here, I found out that there was a little text. It was an artwork by Alois Kronschlager, an Austrian artist who glorified the 15th centigrade longitude on the eastern hemisphere. And as you can see on the lower left picture, he left a very tiny crack in this metal box where the light from the south at noon just peeped through. So the moment where the sun is at its apex, bridging east and west on a daily basis, there was this artwork highlighting, glorifying this moment of this gift, so to speak. I also passed this artwork at not far from Vienna, and this is the encounter between the German queen Brunhilde and Attila the Hun, another version of our eternal encounter with the East. The Hun as the nomadic wild personality being tamed by the German Queen Brunhilde as the essence of one of the important moments in the story of the Nibelungenlied, put on music by Wagner, of course. I passed the concentration camp of Mauthausen, also in Austria. Another border, you could say, the border of evil, an institution to kill in the years between 38 and 45. And I arrived there at sunset. It was almost dark, and it just added to the eeriness of this situation. In Vienna, I went to the museum where they feature a lot of paintings about the siege of Vienna by the Turks that happened several times in history. There's a lot to say about this siege and also about how the memory of these sieges of the Turks to Vienna actually also contribute to a certain hostile idea about the East for centuries. And one of the people who was crucial in this narrative of hostility was Clemens von Metternich, an Austrian diplomat who lived in the early 19th century and who I found on a bookshelf in a little bookstore in Vienna. I crossed the border of the West at the Iron Curtain, finding monuments of Soviet times, abandoned, derelict monuments. Here, one in Bulgaria, on the top of a mountain, no longer accessible, but I managed to find a path up the mountain to come close to this architectural marvel that now is just a ruin of a lost ideology. I crossed the border from Roman Catholic world to the Eastern Orthodox world, finding suddenly very different pictures of the life of Christ. No longer much emphasis on his suffering, as very strongly you can find in Catholic iconography, and making Christ suddenly kind of victorious person. A completely different interpretation of the biblical story, but very important to understand why this conception of Christ from someone who suffers to someone who eventually is victorious is should help us to understand Eastern Europe very much. I entered Turkey, the Muslim world, not far from Istanbul, where I was confronted ever since for the next 3 months of cycling with the icon, the image of the star and the crescent, the sun and the moon, in constant interaction, light and darkness in constant interaction, as a very basic idea of what life is all about, as you can find in Islamic cultures. And then just one day later, arriving in Istanbul, the former Constantinople, the Blue Mosque, entering the Islamic world and staying there for several months. And not only the religion of the Islamic world, but also the sharing, the mindset of sharing. I would like to show you in this little detail of the Grand Bazaar in Istanbul, where the merchants are bringing each other the cup of tea by which they can further negotiate about their carpets and about their spices and everything that they have brought from the Silk Road to this node, Istanbul. And much further down the road, already in China, I came to this reclining Buddha. I had already left behind the Muslim world and I entered the Buddhist world of West China. And this is a very beautiful figure of Buddha about to reach Nirvana. But again, there were many interesting references to the typical Chinese way to interpret Buddhism. And that also was very helpful for me to understand China and its Buddhist dimension. And it's Taoist, the Taoism of the Chinese, seeing your road in life, just like the road I took on the bicycle, as a road of fate, of destiny. And here I saw from the corner of my eye a small insect on my road, on my Dao, and I decided, let me take that picture. Somewhere on the road, I also found some squattered on the road. I found pieces from a mahjong game. And in the middle, that was quite peculiar because there are many pieces of mahjong, but the one I found in the middle was the hongjong. It's the red, almost symmetrical piece in the middle of this row. And the hongjong in mahjong is also an interesting reference to not to Buddhism or Taoism, but to Confucianism. Because in Confucius, you can learn how the passions of life need to be mediated by order, and how only by finding balance, zhong, the zhong, which means the middle, actually helps to create the equity and the balance between the extremes of life and the passions of life. So the hongjong is a piece of Mahjong, but actually it's also a piece of China. It was helping me. These kind of little moments on the road, they were helping me to understand the culture that I found myself in. I passed the Mons Ararat, the Mount Ararat in eastern Turkey, which I also would like to show you because it's such a majestic mountain. And as probably some of you know, it was also a place where in the story of Noah and his ark, he found at the tip of this mountain, the top of this mountain, the first piece of land after the flood. So the Mons Ararat was actually the moment where God decided to give back to the people his creation, according to the Old Testament, the Genesis book. So this has been steering a lot of research. Did they really find, was there really an ark somewhere on this mountain? They even did excavations, archaeological research to find an ark at this mountain. But when I was there and I passed this mountain, actually I found in the shape of this mountain that it might have been a metaphor of an ark. This is a piece of nature, so powerful and so beautiful, so pristine, that maybe the redeeming power of an ark was found in the shape of this very mountain itself. And I could suddenly see, actually, it's almost like a ship, with the big volcano and a smaller volcano on the right. And then, of course, it's after these kind of experiences, it's very nice and also humbling to find references to Noah and the story of Noah in sculptures in Venice. Slowly we are moving to Venice because I realize that I'm talking in Venice. So I would like to bring back these messages that I found on the road to what you can learn and see in Venice. And here there is a very interesting piece of the life of Noah after the flood, where he is found in a moment of drunkenness by his children. And one of his children is not very respectful to Noah, but his other two children, they are. So there is a whole interesting history about of course, the fate and destiny of Noah himself, but also the way he parented and the way his sons are dealing with such a pivotal figure. There were symbols of brokenness between East and West. Here a bridge, one of the many wars that I experienced, historical and even contemporary wars that were part of my journey experiences. And here one of the ruins of what once was a bridge. The Great Wall of China, and the crossing of rivers, all these rivers that were essential in rising cultures and allowing people to settle down and to find resources and food. The rivers as lifelines of many cultures. Here is one in Holland, the Rhine, and here one in Serbia, the Danube. Another one of the Danube near Bulgaria, and crossing the Bosporus from the European side to the Asian side in Istanbul. And here much further down the road, the river Huai, the Huai River in mid-China. And in every of these ferries, these moments of passage, I had conversations with the ferryman about what it means to go from the one side to the other, and what are the differences between those sides. Mountains, I had many. Some very high and very cold. At one moment I murmured in myself that this famous phrase, maybe you know it, about Mohammed and the mountain, that when the mountain doesn't come to Mohammed, Mohammed should go to the mountain. And deserts. Here the Gobi Desert in Xinjiang, West China. Even up to the Flaming Mountains, the hottest place on earth. And when I arrived there early May, it was already in the upper 40s, blocking the road. I could no longer cycle that day because it simply became too hot. And this was exactly at the place where in the Xiyouji, maybe you remember the Journey to the West, in the Chinese famous travelogue, also this monk chasing the Indian sutras, the Buddhist sutras, had to stop and find a solution to continue. And finally, finding some green land again. Cultured life, greener and greener, all the way to finally reach Shanghai. That was a happy moment. And before I went to work, because I work in Shanghai as teacher, before I went to work to see my students, who accompanied me in the mind all the way on the bicycle, I decided to first make a visit to a beautiful park and library called Heping Library. And since I tried to understand the East and get closer and closer in understanding the East, of course never really reach it. It's almost like an asymptotic relationship. But understanding more about all these different cultures. And then finally entering China and have all these conversations with ordinary Chinese people in the countryside. Finally arriving in Shanghai, going to a library dedicated to peace, because Heping means peace. And I understood it's a very different kind of peace from the Western word, the Latin word pax, English peace, pace in Italian. They have different sources and they have different concept of what it actually means to have peace and to create peace. I will talk about this more. I have not so much time anymore, so I will hurry up a little bit. This is just the welcoming ceremony at TEDx Shanghai. And now I refer to my great predecessor, who at this very place, the Biblioteca Marciana, they hold the last will of Marco Polo. And one of the things that was striking to me was how in the life of Marco Polo and his long multi-year stay in China, he managed to build a very good relationship with the Chinese leadership. He even mentioned somewhere having a kind of laissez-passer in China, what I would call a green card. I have a Chinese green card too. It's nice to have when you want to navigate in China. He had one too. How the Kublai Khan Mongol ruler trusted him and gave him the freedom to move around in this mysterious empire. So here is the itinerary after all. You can see where I started in Amsterdam and I ended in Shanghai. I didn't go to Venice on my journey itself because I prioritized the direct experience, but I knew, as I said, almost intuitively that one day I would be here and report to you. And it's even, the most overwhelming experience to do this in this beautiful place. The blue line on this map is the itinerary of Marco Polo. Another unbelievable moment on the road was the encounter between two dragons, the dragons of East and West, somewhere in mid-Persia, which I completely coincidentally found, because one Persian guy, Mr. Salimi, he saw me cycling in somewhere in the middle of Iran and chased me with his motorbike. And at first I felt very uncomfortable because of this. And then he came next to me and he said, I want to tell you something, in a very basic English. And he asked me, were you looking for the dragons? No, I don't know anything about dragons. Then I need to bring you there. So he brought me to this place where in the 15th century, I should say, when there was still a Mongol ruler in Persia, one of the grandsons of Genghis Khan, had invited Han Chinese sculptors to make two dragons, one on the east side and one on the west side of this quarry. And they were representing the dialogue between East and West. So just by coincidence, I came to an artwork touching upon the core of my own purpose of the journey. Now, let's say a few words about Venice, because, of course, I felt this intuition to come here, and I need to explain that. I have a relationship with Venice. I was curator of the Dutch pavilion several times at the Biennale, and that's, let's say, every 2 years you go here at the heydays of the Biennale, as many others do. But already when I was working for the Dutch government to make these exhibitions in the pavilion, okay, hurry up. I also decided to already start showing Chinese work at the Finnish pavilion. And a few years ago, 5 years exactly, at the COVID pandemic, I decided let's take another turn towards architecture, not these festive every 2 years showing the latest of the latest, but trying to grasp a deeper meaning of architecture and trying to do something with a big cultural event of this stature. So here we see a place that you know so well. So I try to understand a little bit better about some key iconographic elements in the very neighborhood here. For instance, how Venice itself related to the East, all those centuries of glory and its historical adventure. One example, for instance, the way the relics, the remains of Saint Marcus, San Marco, came to Venice, taken from Egypt, from Alexandria. This is a great story, giving Venice a philosophical, religious legitimacy for 1,000 years later. But how did it happen? You should read about the story. How did this work? And how did San Marco came to Venice? Is a beautiful story about East-West relations. And here in the entrance, the left entrance of the cathedral, you see this moment of entry of the remains of San Marco happening in the mosaic. San Marco, actually, I found a text on my journey in the Cathedral of Regensburg in Germany. On the page where San Marco expresses his belief that before we find the Holy Spirit, we need to chase out the demons inside of us. There's always a relationship between redemption and struggle. I don't know why it's suddenly going through it, but it doesn't matter. I also would like to mention the lion, another element. So besides the mosaic with the entrance of San Marco, also the lion of Venice on the Sokol here with the eyes towards the east is an interesting piece of dialogue between east and west. Recently also they found that the copper and maybe even some of the shape of this lion was sourced from China. So this lion expressing the identity and the power and the might of Venice at the same time is also an evidence of Venice century-long dialogue between East and West. And since we're running short, we're running out of time, I will pass this example of the expellation from paradise, again at the Palazzo Ducale, at another corner. You may take a look later. I also will pass the example of Napoleon transforming the San Marco Square by making it more like an urban interior, and what that means if a guy like Napoleon did that, because I also went to see a legacy of Napoleon when I stopped. My first stop was in Waterloo, where there's a lion on top of the hill, the Lion's Mount in Waterloo, watching France, warning France not to engage in any more imperial war. Only 20 years, not even 20 years after he won his fight against Venice. I have another example, the feast of Il Redentore, the Holy Redeemer. I will skip that too because too much time to explain, but it's an interesting story about an element of going east by going to this unbelievable church at the festival to celebrate the end of the epidemic, the plague. The East is ubiquitous as a colony, a fear, a concern, a mystery, a partner, a crime scene, a paradise, a psychological dimension, and this city has examples of each of these. And this place, holding the collection by Cardinal Bessarion, who believed 500 years ago that European culture could not do without the fusion of East and West, Roman and Greek, and who worked very hard to save documents and pass it on to next generations, to help people understanding the dialogue, understanding the universal values as written by the Greek philosophers and received and interpreted by the Roman philosophers. It's a great story and a great hero of Venice, as represented by some of the unbelievable artworks here. I feel chased. I need to hurry up. So I will not go into details about Tiziano, the painter, who had who painted the Wisdom painting here in the vestibule, but also some very beautiful works that expresses his subtle awareness of the flip side of reason and power. But this only allows me to come back to the very initial words by Professor Trovato, who mentioned this amazing text of Christopher Columbus, who actually reached out, expressed this attitude of adventure and exploration, but at the same time also brought back an idea of conquest that you could call imperial. There is one quote from this document, from this letter, where he announces how easy it is to take into possession the land that he found. And this dialectics between adventure, wisdom, redemption, the will to explore, curiosity, creativity on the one hand, and at the same time control, might, power on the other. That's a dialectics that I understand much better after traveling 10,000 kilometers, but I guess for being in Venice, it's almost like natural to understand. This is at stake today. Another peace effort is this Western version of Pax, or is it the Chinese version of Heping? I do believe, personally, that we should find a synthesis between these two extremes that can only fight each other, or by the virtue of wisdom, find another dimension, a transcendence. The Peace Park in Shanghai, but also this olive tree very near the place where Zeus came to Crete. And I offer you, as a gesture of goodwill, a few leaves of this olive tree, which turns out to be 3,500 years old as Europe itself. The mythical figure, the mother of King, the mother of King Minos of Crete. So thank you very much. My argument has come full circle, and I hope that it came across. Thank you very much again for the opportunity to speak here, and goodbye.
And I thank our speaker, the director, for hosting us, and la dottoressa Venturello per tutto il lavoro che ha fatto per fare questo possibile per noi. Grazie. Grazie a tutti voi. Grazie.
Mi associo ai ringraziamenti. Il viaggio è stato affascinante. Mi è venuto in mente, aggiungo solo una piccolissima cosa, a proposito di quella curiosa insomma, quella traduzione del termine pace in altre lingue, sempre pensando alle raccolte qua della Marciana. Noi abbiamo, anzi parlo in inglese forse, o dopo tradurre. Abbiamo un libro raro che in alfabeto latino, lingua giapponese, dei missionari gesuiti, in cui loro si ponevano il problema di tradurre la parola santo della Chiesa Cattolica. Noi riuscivano a tradurla in giapponese, e infatti il libro inizia il libro è in alfabeto latino e lingua giapponese, quindi stampato dai gesuiti che andavano a propagandare la religione cattolica, e la prima parola è sanctus. Cioè hanno preso di peso la parola del latino e spostata in giapponese. Quindi è sempre bello trovare anche questi spunti, grazie al professore, anche nelle nostre raccolte. Non so se c'è tempo per qualche domanda. No, dobbiamo chiudere purtroppo. Allora, ringraziamo il professore, la professoressa Eliado, il pubblico, e speriamo che abbia dato molti spunti suggestivi. Thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Bauman is at your disposal for any questions.